Welcome back to the WANTcast, the Women Against Negative Talk podcast. Lessons in moving forward fearlessly and spreading the good word. I'm Katie Horwich. I'm a writer, a speaker, a mindset coach, the founder of Want, Women Against Negative Talk, a platform that gives you tips, tools, motivation, and inspiration to shift your negative self-talk patterns, and the author of Want Yourself, Shift Your Self-Talk and Unearth the Strength in Who You Were All Along. I am so happy you're here. Let's begin. Okay, so I very rarely record these introductions right after I do podcast interviews, but I was so excited and so inspired by today's interview that I had to come on here and record this right away. I'm so excited for you to hear or watch, if you're watching on YouTube, this episode. This episode is, dare I say, a balm of hope for a time right now that can feel, if you're anything like me, really scary and can feel really out of your control. Today's guest is sustainability expert and author Ashlee Piper. Ashlee Piper is a sustainability expert, commentator, and speaker whose work has been featured on more than 300 TV segments, including The Today Show, Good Morning America, and CNN. And in Vogue, The New York Times, The Washington Post, The Atlantic, and Newsweek. Piper's 2018 book, Give a Shit, Do Good, Live Better, and Save the Planet, has been hailed as a sustainability Bible by celebrities and reviewers. Piper has spoken at the United Nations and South by Southwest and has a popular TED Talk. She is also the creator of the No New Things Challenge, for which she received a 2022 Silver Stevie Award for Female Innovator of the Year and is a professor of sustainability marketing. We are here today to talk about Ashlee's new book and movement, No New Things, a radically simple 30-day guide to saving money, the planet, and your sanity. Now, if that sounds like a lofty promise to you, I can assure you this book is one of the most pragmatic and inclusive books that I've ever read when it comes to what to do when you feel like you can't do anything. Like the planet is on fire, everything is chaos, you don't even know where to start. This book, this challenge, this movement is the place to start. And if you're tuning in and thinking, well, I don't know if this one is for me. I don't know if I could do a no new things challenge. First of all, as Ashlee says, it's not a no buy challenge. It's not a no new anything challenge. It is no new things. It's a challenge and a movement that helps us explore our relationship with stuff and then do something about that relationship that is proactive for not only our own lives, but for the world at large. I am not going to spend one more second introducing Ashlee and this concept because I want you to get all of the goods. And trust me, this conversation is filled with so many goods. Here's Ashlee. I am actually going to list your books. I have an extra copy. I'm going to list it in my Buy Nothing group.
Oh, that's so nice.
I thought, like, what great publicity and how appropriate.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Well, yeah. I mean, I love that. Obviously, it's very much in the spirit of the book as well.
You were the one who introduced me to Buy Nothing groups, actually.
Was I?
Yeah.
You know what's so funny, too, is like I know the women who wrote the book about Buy Nothing group and created the concept. And in my local Chicago group, which I've been a member of for a long time, I got kicked out of that group because I moved ever so slightly away from the neighborhood perimeter. I thought it was funny.
I kind of love that Buy Nothing groups have now become so exclusive that if you don't live on the correct street, you get kicked off.
Yeah, you got to be, I mean, really in that particular neighborhood or it's over for you. But that's great. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, you introduced me to Buy Nothing groups. You introduced me just over the years. Through that time, you've introduced me to so many different things that have really enhanced my life because I come from a family of shopping as an activity, shopping as a bonding experience. And also, I'm an LA girl, and it's a consumer-based town. And so it really has been my time knowing you that I have really learned how to be the type of person around my stuff that honestly, my stuff deserves me to be. Like, my stuff deserves for me to have pride in it. And, I'll anthropomorphize everything. So it's like, my couch deserves me to have actual feelings about it versus it being just like another thing. You really, really have shifted my mindset in a profound way. I'm not perfect, but a profound way around that.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Well, you have shifted my mindset on many things and enhanced my life in many ways.
So we are here to talk about no new things. We're here to talk about the book and the concept and ethos around no new things. Can you tell us a little bit about the origin story of no new things and your own personal no new things journey? Actually, we should probably start with what is no new things.
Sure. So No New Things is a book that takes you through both the history of consumption and overconsumption in the United States, as well as overconsumption and marketing and climate change and the intersections of all of those. Because I really believe you need to understand certain social phenomena in order to wrangle some of your consumerist habits. And then the book goes into a guided, fully shepherded 30-day challenge to do no new things. Every week has a theme. Every day has an action item. It has a why behind why are you doing this particular thing on this particular day? And what is the potential impact of that, both on the planet, but also for you? What are you potentially going to experience? As far as how it started, No New Things really was just a personal challenge for me. I started doing it in 2013 as a way to better align with my sustainability values and to also save some money, be a better steward of my money, because I was in a space where, and it's interesting because there have been some lovely media coverage on the villain origin story of No New Things. And some of that, you know how it is with media, some of that splices and dices the story in a way that makes it sound like I was a certified shopaholic and I had the clinical problem and I was deeply in debt. And yes, I was in consumer debt. And yes, I was spending to kind of self-soothe. But I wasn't necessarily in these financial dire straits. And I also didn't necessarily have a problem per se. I had something that I was uncomfortable with. I'd got myself in a habit that I was uncomfortable with. And I wanted to see if I could course correct on that. So I just thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see if I could buy nothing new, with, of course, a few caveats, which is something people also seem really, really hung up on. Even today, people are like, no new underwear for 2 years, disgusting, and I'm like, whoa, this is a small snippet of an otherwise like 300 plus page book. So like, just everybody, please, let's have some space for nuance. Obviously, I'm not out here wearing dumpster dived secondhand worn underwear or whatever. But anyway, so I thought it would be interesting to see if there were other ways I could get my needs met besides just adding to cart or going into a store and buying something new. And I've done challenges like this, maybe not No New Things specifically, but I've done challenges that were intended to stretch me before. Like, can I go without coffee for however long? That wasn't a good challenge for me. Or could I read all the books on my bookshelf before I watch TV? And I did that a long, long time ago and ended up actually really enjoying it. So this was in 2013, before there were actually all of the online marketplaces. It was before Poshmark and Facebook Marketplace. There was Craigslist, there was eBay, there were brick and mortar thrift stores, but there weren't nearly as many outlets to get items secondhand. So, I just said, okay, well, obviously I'm still going to pay my bills. I'm still going to meet all my financial obligations. And I'm going to procure items new that are best procured new for hygiene reasons or just because that's the way the world works. So groceries and toothbrushes and underpants, things like that. And I know no-buy challenges have become really popular, but this isn't really a no-buy challenge because I still was allowing myself to do all the things that brought me joy, go on vacations, spend money on experiences like concerts and the theater and going to museums and stuff like that that brought me joy. Still being generous, like giving donations, going out to eat. These were all things I really enjoyed and wanted to support the local economy in that way. So it really was focused on things like stuff, because I felt I had a stuff problem and a stuff acquisition problem, if you will. So that's really how the challenge started. I gave myself 30 days to do it, thinking, let's see how it goes. And I found the benefits to be so unexpected that I ended up doing it for almost 2 years. And then since then, I think also people hear that because, again, the hooks of titles of news articles and stuff are like, I didn't buy anything new for 2 years. You shouldn't either. And all this kind of wacky absolutist shit. And I know the title of the book is No New Things. So people sometimes think, well, this is old news. She did it in 2013. So what? She did it for 2 years. It's 2025. Why do we give a shit? And,
which is the name of your first book.
I still do No New Things, both a very adherent version of it, at least 2 months out of every year. And then the tenets of No New Things are just so much a part of my life now that 98% of everything in my life, everything in my house is secondhand or free or procured in some kind of No New Things adjacent way. Of course, I still buy new things on occasion, but this is very much a challenge that I started thinking it'd be a personal thing, and it's continued to be a part of my life. And the way I never intended it to be a book, it kind of just was like I had posted to my pretty modest Instagram following. I think back in like maybe 2016, I'd posted like, hey, I'm going to do my No New Things challenge. And the response was kind of jarring, actually. People were really interested to know more about it and to get in on it. And then some other folks who had much bigger followings were like, I'd like to do it. And they generously shared their experiences doing it with their followers. And from that, I started getting people, one, sharing their experiences with me doing it. And I kind of realized, oh, some of these experiences are pretty profound for people. And so maybe there is more to this than just what I've been experiencing. And two, people were saying, we'd really like a more shepherded version of No New Things, like a book. I swore up and down after my first book, I'm not writing another freaking book. And then it just became more apparent that maybe this would be something that would lend itself well to a book. But there were definitely people who were like, a book on not consuming stuff, a book combating overconsumption is never nobody's going to go for that. And then I think the zeitgeist just converged, because right around the time I got the book deal last year is when hashtag overconsumption and hashtag underconsumption were trending on social media pretty viciously. And I thought, okay, well, maybe the timing is right for this.
And you just saying how many people have gotten profound experiences, and yourself included, lasting changes from this. It becomes a lifestyle shift. I'm curious to know, what do you attribute that sort of long-term shift to? Do you think it's emotional reasons? Do you think it's a more zeitgeisty thing? Like, what's the success secret sauce here?
I don't know if there's a success secret sauce here. I think that I've just been doing this for such a long time, and like a broken clock is right twice a day. I've been going on TV for a long time talking about sustainability, and that people would ask me things like, what are the things I need to buy to be more sustainable? And that's a very earnest and totally natural question, right? Because we've been so conditioned to be consuming things and purchasing and acquiring things as a way of being a solution to a problem or supplying up for a new lifestyle. And I'd always be like, nothing. You don't need to buy anything. For a long time, I've been saying I'm not an influencer, right? Because I'm probably never going to pimp products out. I know that I have a book and that's a thing, but de-influencing, right, is something I've probably just kind of naturally been doing, because I just don't think there's a lot of stuff you need to buy to be sustainable. If anything, you need to just use what you've already got. And so I think because I've been doing that for so long, it just kind of the timing just happened to line up. As far as why underconsumption or de-influencing or whatever it might be, or conscious consumerism, I think has become much more of interest to people generally out there is, in social media, so much of social media culture, which we're all steeped in, is very much rooted in hauls and showing an abundance of things and restocks. And I think a lot of people, especially in a climate of economic strain as well, or uncertainty, which we're certainly facing more of now, people feel fatigued by that. People feel fatigued by that look of like, oh, watch me restock my coffee bar or my 50-step self-care routine. And I'm not shitting on those. There's a place for those. They can be really aesthetic and interesting. And I don't want people to stop doing things that bring them joy. If it really is meaningful and fulfilling to them, I don't want people to stop doing that. I don't want to vilify people who create that kind of content. But I also think a lot of people are exasperated by it and feel like it's pushing a narrative of not enoughness. And more people are trying to find satisfaction. They're finding that consumerism offers very little satisfaction and that there are other kind of lost arts of our way of life that offer a lot more, like creating community, being creative with what you have, feeling gratitude when you look around and see the relative abundance you enjoy. Those are things that have a much more lasting, satisfying effect for people than buying a bunch of stuff. And then obviously like the financial insecurity piece of it. I mean, the data doesn't lie. You can't really do much about the cost of housing, health insurance, food, things like that. There's not a ton you can do to change that. However, your discretionary spending is something you can get your arms around if you are lucky enough to have discretionary income to spend. And those of us who do, we tend to spend it in a way that depletes our coffers there really quickly to the point where we're like, where did it all go? And then we look around and we've got a house full of stuff that isn't serving us. And so I think there's also that piece of it where people are wanting to declutter and get organized and kind of cut down on the mental load that our stuff has in our lives and also feel more financially solvent. And so those kind of all converged, I think, to make people see that shopping might not be this like recreational pastime that's joy giving that like you and I have been socialized to believe, that we've all been socialized to believe.
Yeah. And it's not saying that you can't enjoy shopping, period, which I love. Like my mom comes into town into New York a few times a year, and there's certain places that we love going together and that she can only go in New York. But it's more about the experience. Sometimes we don't get anything. And then if we do, it's like I've been here for almost 10 years. Now she's like, oh, remember, like, got that when I came to New York, like right after you and Jeremy got married. You know, it's tied to memories. But what you've mentioned before, the beauty of this challenge and then that sort of rolling into lifestyle is the amount of time that you can get back. Can you speak to the time part of the equation?
Yeah, I think a lot of us don't realize that our stuff, like any item, and that's really why the challenge and the book is centered on things and not no buy generally, because I don't think we fully realize that every item we welcome into our lives, we become the inventory manager of. We, have to figure out where we're going to put it. We're going to clean it. We're going to, learn how to use it. We need to repair it. What are we going to do when we have to store it or offload it? Nowadays we're hearing more about mental load and invisible labor and all that stuff. But our things take up a significant amount of mental space, and they also take up a significant amount of time. So for a long time, I've been quoting this kind of statistic from the Department of Labor. They do an American time use study. And that's kind of just like how Americans by gender and age spend their time. It's sort of a census they do every few years. And there's a stat in there that the average American spends 55 minutes a day just looking for things, looking for stuff among our stuff. So we know that we're a society that's buckling under the weight of our stuff. And when I did the challenge the first time, one of the most immediate impacts that was positive that I noticed, even more than the money aspect. Obviously, I knew if I'm not blowing my load on a bunch of shit I don't need, I'm probably going to save a little money. But what I noticed immediately was how much time I had in my life. Like I'm not browsing for stuff. I'm not popping into a store as a means of self-soothing or getting a dopamine hit. And I was like, wait, I have like time to read a book. I have time to do all these. I have time to work on the goals or the things I said I didn't have time to do. So I was almost like spoiled with time. And I know that won't be the impact for everyone, but a lot of people who have done No New Things, and even in just like the summer of 2022, I had 12,000 people sign up to do No New Things on my newsletter. Did all of them do it? Maybe not. And that's fine. But did some of them do it? Absolutely. And the people who wrote me of their own volition and told me they'd done the challenge cited time back as one of the number one things. They were shocked about the time they had to pour into relationships, into themselves, personal development, their goals, time they had just to do genuine leisure. I mean, we're so hustle culture-y and stuff like that. Like, when was the last time you just stopped and sat and stared? You know, that's totally a legitimate form of leisure and relaxation. And a lot of times we don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And I didn't realize how much shopping had siphoned time from my life. And the statistics prove that. If you look at how much time we spend on social media and television, which is, I think, almost 3 to 5 hours a day for the average American, those are both monetized to the hilt. So you're always getting advertisements telling you to buy shit on there. And then how much time people spend just shopping, that's about an hour a day. That doesn't include browsing, cleaning the items that you have in your home, repairing those items, figuring out how to offload them, rearranging them, finding other things among your other items. So you can kind of imagine the amount of time you might potentially get back if you shift your focus from shopping to other things. And that's, for me, one of the number one things I noticed immediately and in abundance. I was like, whoa, I have way more time than I thought I did in a day. And that's not to shame people who might not have that same. Obviously, everybody's life situations are different. If you've got a family and or you're working 3 jobs or something, yeah, your time back, you might not be shopping that much. Your time back might not be that evident. But for me, it was huge. And for other people, it has been too.
When you talk about the time piece and the getting the time back, it makes me think of people who actually, when they do have downtime, they sort of fill it with shopping, and that's become a hobby, which makes me think of the way that you've structured the challenge. And you've done a really wonderful job of structuring it in a way that really starts with analyzing why you're doing what you're doing and the emotional aspects of it. So can you break down a little bit about the structure of the challenge and like why this structure?
Yeah, sure. So the structure of the challenge, I really wanted to have it be, first of all, it's not rigid. So this is not like 75 hard or something where if you forget to take a progress picture or whatever, you have to start all over again. It's very much like a choose your own adventure type of book. So the structure was informed a lot by people who had done the challenge before, who told me, I really liked this day. I felt it could be better in this kind of week, you know, and so I really listened to that and wanted. And then I also, before I wrote the book last year, I did 2 full months of No New Things following 2 different kinds of structures just to see what made the most sense, what felt like the clearest, and what steps needed to be first to really get someone feeling prepared, because you don't need money. You don't need to buy supplies. You really don't need to do a lot of prep to do No New Things, but a little bit of foresight is helpful in setting the goals, visualizing what you want to get out of it, and also making a list of, oh, what are the things I might need to get while I'm doing the challenge? And what are alternative ways that are commensurate with the challenge guidelines that I can get those needs met during the challenge so that you're not feeling stuck or whatever. The way it's structured is the first week is very much these kind of foundational, the fundamentals of No New Things. And that's very much around visualizing your success, making a need note, which is, what do I need? What might I need in the next 30 days? And how can I get those needs met? Making a love list. These are activities that are not thing related, that give you the same feeling or a better feeling than shopping. And they're going to help you also to deflect from a shopping impulse, potentially. If you're really like, I want to buy something right now. It's like a running joke that I said once in an interview, I go find my cat and I talk to him. And now everybody thinks I'm like a J.D. Vance childless cat lady, lamer or whatever. But sometimes I do that. I'm sure you do that with your babes, you know.
Obviously.
Obviously.
I talk to her every day, all day.
literally all the time. But also if I'm like, that looks interesting and I know I'm procrastinating or whatever, and I'm feeling a shopping impulse, I'll be like, where's Skipper? And I'll go find him and be like, what are you doing, Kook? And like, yeah. And then the urge is gone because I've kind of deflected away from shopping and done something else. So that's a love list. Some people call it a dopamine menu, whatever works for you. I have people write those out so that they have them accessible and they can go, okay, I'm going to do this. I cite this a lot, but I thought it was funny. There's a guy who did No New Things in the summer of 2022. And he told me one of the things on his love list that he does a lot is when he feels the impulse to buy something, he does 25 sit-ups. And I thought, I can envision what this man looks like. I don't know what he looks like, but I can envision it, And so like whatever it is for someone, and that's going to be different for everybody. Because I've had people be like, I'm not doing 25 sit-ups. I don't have a cat. Do what works for you. You've got to figure out what your thing is. There's also tracking your triggers, which I take people through. That was the most valuable step I had found when I started doing No New Things for myself, was looking at how am I feeling when I have the impulse to buy something. Where did I see or get that impulse? Did I see an advertisement? Did I see an influencer hawking it? What time was it? And on what kind of medium or channel? So very rarely are you going to see a billboard and go, I want to buy something. But it's super likely you're scrolling TikTok at night in bed and you see somebody who looks gorgeous and you're like, I got to buy that skincare. That's much more likely. So I found by tracking my triggers, I was able to see that nighttime is a particularly vulnerable time for me. Scrolling while I'm in bed is when I experience the most impulses to buy new things, or when I'm feeling tired, when I'm procrastinating on something, like if I don't want to do work or if I don't want to go work out, I'll be like, we'll fire up like the social media or look online or something. And I start getting the itch to buy something new. So it's rarely ever like a utilitarian need. I think it's something like only 1 or 2% of our purchases are utilitarian, like, oh, I need a charger. Oh, it's snowing. I need snow boots. The rest of them are usually subconscious, and they're very much to assuage a need or a feeling or a condition. So it's like, I'm happy. I want to buy something. I'm excited. I'm sad. I'm cold. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. My bra is digging into the side of me. He hasn't texted me back. If I had a nickel when I was dating for every time I would be like, I'm going to Ross if some guy ghosted me or something. I'd be rich, So just every human condition, we're conditioned to buy things. So data collecting on yourself, that's what the trigger tracker kind of is. And you quickly start to see, oh gosh, I like to buy things when I'm feeling a kind of way. The second week is about kind of honing these. You've got the fundamentals. Now I'm going to show you how to meet your needs in a boss way. So showing you how to shop secondhand, upcycle, and also ethically offload in ways that aren't going to be intimidating or scary and set you up for success. And then you're also going to be doing a lot of the silencing of the spending or blocking the shop, which is removing a lot of the temptations from your life that make shopping such a frictionless and elegant experience and such an easy experience. So really reintroducing some friction into your commerce life, if you will.
Can you give an example of that real fast?
Yeah. So like used to be, if you wanted to buy something, you would have to get your ass up and you'd go to a store and buy it. That's friction because you actually have to get up and go and maybe look presentable, maybe throw on a bra. I don't know. Maybe put on some foundation for me. And then sometimes even before that, you'd have to go to the bank. You'd have to go to a freaking bank and get some money and then go buy stuff at a store. And even at the dawn of e-commerce, you'd still need to like get up, get your credit card, dislodge it, type in the number, all of that friction. Now, because we have our payment information stored immediately in every place, including on all of our devices, you can literally be on the toilet and you can buy a yacht, or you can finance a Chipotle burrito in installments. And so it's really getting back to not making shopping so inconvenient that you're like looming your own clothes and things like that, but rather like you're reintroducing some friction, because the science on shopping impulses isn't out there as much. But if we look at other kinds of impulse or craving related things like food cravings, for instance, that craving only lasts around 2 to 7 minutes. And so if you can ride out that urge for that 2 to 7 minutes by one, making shopping more difficult, two, having items from your love list that you can pull from and go, okay, in that 2 to 7 minutes, I'm really wanting to buy this thing, but I'm going to do the sit-ups, or I'm going to go find my cat, or I'm going to call my friend, or whatever it is. You are really likely to be successful in beating that urge. And then after that 2 to 7 minutes, if you're like, oh no, I actually do really need this thing, you're at least coming back to it with a more clear-eyed focus of, you can be more rational because you're not in this swirl of, oh, it's so awesome and it's going to change my life. You're much more like, I took some time away from it. I'm back. The impulse is gone. Logically, would this be an enhancement to my life, or do I need this thing? More often than not, I come back to it and go, what was I thinking? And so adding some more of that friction, and also removing some of the temptation. It used to be we would see maybe some advertisements in a magazine, maybe some advertisements on TV, maybe a billboard as you're driving past, but it wasn't the thousands and thousands of impressions we get every day that are trying to sell us things.
And the emails.
Oh, the emails, the push notifications. Like I talk in the book about how I've been doing this for a long time. I don't really get notifications on my phone because I've disabled all of them. Because why, right? I don't get the emails. But I was hiking in the Himalayas. I was literally at Annapurna Base Camp, and my phone buzzed, and I got a push notification from freaking Walmart. And those are things you opt into, but I didn't even realize that I had. And so many of us don't realize we have either at any point in time. And I was like, I'm in the fucking Himalayas, okay? Like, this is some of the highest parts of the world to the point where I don't even have reception a lot of times to tell my family I'm alive. And yet I'm getting a push notification from Walmart. Not to vilify Walmart, but that's just how it's just part of us having devices. And again, not vilifying technology or anything like that. But if you're not comfortable with your relationship to consumption and consumerism, you got to do some of these things to be able to have some breathing room from it, because it's all around us. So reintroduce in some friction into that experience so that you can beat that. And then the third week is about your space and your stuff. So it's looking at the things you have. We're going to repair the stuff that you have, reinstate the utility and the beauty of the things you have. You're going to use up all the products you've got. You're going to ethically offload the items that you no longer need. Something around No New Things is once you turn your attention to all the things you actually have and making those useful and beautiful, or finding other homes for them, it ratchets up the feeling of gratitude and abundance in your life. And when you feel like you have enough and you feel appreciative for the things that you do have, because most of us have enough. There are people out there, of course, who don't have enough. To even be able to do No New Things is a place of privilege, and it's a luxury, right? But a lot of us have that luxury. We're coming from that place of privilege, and we're not comfortable with where we're going with it. So looking at all of this stuff and seeing I've got more than enough, not only does that feel freaking great, but it is an excellent antidote to all of the marketing messages that play on and try to instill a feeling of, you're never going to have enough. You're never going to be enough. You're never going to have the right stuff. That gets us to buy. So the more you feel like you're looking around, you're going, I've got a lot of great stuff. Like you said earlier in this episode, like my couch, it deserves for me to be a good steward of it. When you have that feeling, you are so much less susceptible to marketing messages that are going to try to get you to buy a different couch, or going to try to tell you your couch sucks, Katie, or whatever it is, And so that feeling is not just good for you. It's also good because you're not throwing away stuff that has utility in your life. You're actually like making use of the stuff that you have. And then the fourth week is about taking all of that and bringing it out into the world. So how do I travel while doing No New Things? How do I give gifts while doing No New Things? How do I get comfortable with borrowing things? And because that's a part of it, right, is having this more circular, community-oriented way to get our needs met. So it's addressing a lot of, I would say, some of the participants' biggest concerns when they first started doing No New Things. Like, I'm loving the benefits, but how do I take this out into the world in a way that can work? And then how do you extend the challenge if you want to? And what does that look like? How do you self-care in a sustainable, no new things way in this culture that tells us that self-care is bubble baths and 5,000 masks and, you know, an $80 candle and stuff like that. So it's taken it to the streets, really. It's in week 4.
I love that that's week 4, because as you're talking, and I've heard you talk about this many times now, I can hear the voice of the person in the back of the room saying, well, but what if this, or what if that, or what if I love giving gifts? And you really address all of the different what ifs that could potentially hold people back. Is there one that is maybe the one that you hear the most from people?
I think it's toss-up between gift giving and borrowing. Those are the two that people feel the most apprehension about. Gift giving, because culturally, I think, especially in the West, we have such a transactional overfilm to gift giving, where, you know, we are the culture of registries and wish lists, and there's nothing wrong with that. But gift giving is so loaded. You know, you've got a friend who's getting married and you don't want to seem chintzy, you know? So you, of course, want to get them something really nice off their registry. But how many people actually use the 12-person china set or the entire Le Creuset, like big, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we get people because we don't want them to see us as cheap. Secondhand gifts, experience gifts, making just donations, just giving people cash is all somehow seen a little bit as like, oh, they're not putting the effort in, or, oh, it's kind of cheap. Whereas buying something off a registry and someone might never use is considered, that's just a new standard of giving. And I think that's kind of interesting because there's actually some compelling data out there around holiday gifts. Americans, 50% of Americans, full stop, go into consumer debt over the holidays because they want to give gifts, right? And the pressure is real. And I think also we've so conflated gift giving with expenditure. Like, how much did you spend on the gift? You know, we don't give gifts as much like, hey, Katie, I saw this and I thought of you, like, just because. We give more like, hey, it's Christmas and last year I spent $300, but this year I'm going to spend $400 on you because I don't want you to think I'm cheap or whatever it might be. But most of those gifts are like not even wanted. There's a very high percentage of holiday gifts where the recipients are like, I don't want this and I'm actually going to get rid of it. And I think that's interesting because then it just shows it's this transaction that isn't even very beneficial for either party. And so how can we re-inject thoughtfulness and the real nature of gift giving? And I talk in the book about the best gifts that I've ever received are really ones that had showed that the giver kind of understood me or tried to understand me or wanted to inject some novelty into my life or make me laugh or make my life easier. Like your friends maybe had a baby and yeah, they've got that expensive bassinet or whatever on their registry, but maybe she might just want you to come over and clean her kitchen. Those kind of old-fashioned community-oriented ways of caring for each other, that's a gift, is better, I think, in a lot of ways than something that's going to collect dust in the corner, but you spend a lot of money on it.
It almost makes me think of if you were ever the kid who made coupon books, like certificates for your parents to be like, one free hug or one breakfast in bed, or like what I did for Jeremy for his 40th. I made him a coupon book. And there are some tangible experiences like a museum membership, and I forget what was on there. But I think that if people are listening and they are a gift-giving person, just coming from someone who I love giving gifts. I love the types of gifts that you're talking about. I think that it's helpful for people to remember the joy and delight and the types of gifts that we would give to people as children, or like the gifts we've received from children and like why those are so meaningful for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love experiences that you can share with someone are amazing gifts, you know, like, hey, I got us concert tickets, or hey, a museum membership, or we're going to do a mosaic class, or whatever it is. Even volunteering together is a fun gift. There doesn't need to be this relationship to gifting and, again, expenditure. There are so many gifts that you can give, like as a broke person or as someone who doesn't have that much disposable income, that really help. And that can be your time, your thoughtfulness, words of affirmation, you know? So I think in the concerns people have around doing the challenge and gift giving, I think it can actually really expand our definition of gift giving or being generous in a way that gets us back to the original intention of gifting something.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the borrowing.
Yeah. So borrowing's an interesting one because borrowing used to be how we survived. Items were very expensive to produce and very expensive to own. And so it's only a pretty recent phenomenon that households would have one of everything. And that's a very American thing, too, to be like, I have one of everything, collecting dust in my garage or my shed or whatever. And when it comes to those kind of one-off items, these are things that, you know, you can engage in the borrowing community in your neighborhood or with your family or with your friends. I mean, we see it a lot when we have clothing swaps with our friends. Those are some of the best freaking times. They're just awesome because you feel like such a sense of purpose and belonging. So there's that community aspect of it and connection aspect of it that is really nice and has been lost. And we need that as people. There's also just a practical element to it, but we have a lot of shame around borrowing and sharing resources. And I remember I did a TV segment about No New Things during the pandemic, and it was a virtual segment. And I said something I thought was pretty innocuous, like, hey, if you need like a weed whacker or a champagne or like a chocolate fountain, I don't know, stuff most of us aren't going to use every day, and we do not need one. I said, and you know, your neighbor's got one, maybe ask if you can borrow theirs, you know? People, I got so many unsolicited messages from people who were really upset, like shaking fists at the sky upset about that. And they called it cheap. One called me a neighborhood pariah or something. I didn't know these people. And then one called it shameful. And that really stuck with me, that it's shameful to ask your neighbor to borrow something. And I just thought that was so emblematic of exactly what we're talking about here, which is we have been conditioned to think that owning one of everything, even if it makes zero freaking sense and it's just collecting dust, and then keeping that under wraps and not sharing that with anyone, you've made it. That's the apex of the American dream. And that's so weird to me because sharing is one of those things that actually we have clinical data that it feels really fucking good. It's good for us to share our things because it gives us a sense of purpose. It's a reciprocal exchange that's good for both parties. So when you have read a book and it really moved you and you give it to a friend, that's a shared experience that feels really great. When you wear a piece of clothing that's your friend's, or you lend a piece of clothing out to someone and they use it for an event or whatever it might be, that's such a cool experience, you know, and we see that now more people are doing that in buy nothing groups. And it's beautiful because it's not just like practical and helpful to get your needs met. It also forges connections and feels good and is satisfying for us. And I just think it's so interesting because we've, again, been conditioned to think that borrowing is what cheap, opportunistic people do. And it's like, no, Doug, this is how we have survived as people for very long. It's only recently that borrowing has been seen as something kind of cheap or opportunistic.
In my mind, there's sort of two ways that sort of shame fork can go. One is in the materialistic, what you just said, capitalistic, we should own one of everything, it's cheap. And then the other direction is it's more akin to how people feel shame around asking for help and the shame that people have around not having, in many cases, the answers. And maybe in this situation, the thing is the answer. And to admit that you don't have that thing, you don't have that answer, I'd be really interested to see what that correlation is between people who feel shame around borrowing, how that relates to people who have shame around asking for help.
I'm sure it does. I mean, we know that women probably experience even more of a feeling of ick around borrowing because they don't want to be a burden to people. So that's another cultural conditioning of don't inconvenience other people type of thing. But once you get into the swing of borrowing or lending something out, it feels good. And usually it is a very reciprocal exchange. It's not the one-sided thing where one person gets their needs met. It's something where it feels satisfying for you. It feels satisfying for them. And a connection of some sort forms. I'm not saying you're going to become best friends with everyone you engage in like a borrowing arrangement with, but I'm not saying that. And I think that we need that.
Yeah. I mean, if you even look at some of the articles that were written during early pandemic times around the types of relationships that people missed the most, they miss those interactions with the people at the coffee shop, the people at the grocery store. Sometimes people can think of community and they can think of just them and their besties, but community is really about all of the people that you're in community with. And I love that in a time where you've talked about the loneliness epidemic, this is a way where people can sort of unlonely, de-lonelyify themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see it when people volunteer. We see it when people engage in those kind of sharing communities. They feel a sense of belonging and purpose that is really satisfying for them.
I ask everybody 3 questions at the end of the podcast. I call them quick fire questions, but there's nothing quick about them, although I think they are fire. But before we get to those, I would love to ask you first, if people want to get this book, be a part of the challenge, connect with you, learn more about the work that you do, where can people find the book and where can they find you?
They can find the book literally wherever they get books or audiobooks or ebooks. There are all those versions. So the library, and then obviously different retailers, pretty much all the retailers, I think. So there are a variety of non-news thing ways to get the book if that's your bag. And then as far as connecting with me, I'm probably most active on Instagram, which is just Ashlee Piper. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I got a website. But yeah, Instagram's probably where I'm most active.
Awesome. And you have a Substack, right? You have a newsletter.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do have a Substack. And, I'll probably, because I think some people feel even if they want to do no new things, they're like, how does this look in like a real life kind of thing? I'll probably start doing more video content and more Substack content around here's a regular day where I have some of these no new things tenets that I do so that people can see that I do wear clean underwear or whatever, not see it, but
Right.
So that I can assuage people's concerns because that seems to be a really big one.
Right. That you're buying a new toothbrush when you need a new toothbrush.
People are really worried that I'm wearing old underwear out here. Someone else's old underwear.
People care. They care about your hygiene.
I want y'all to get good sleep. I don't want y'all to lose sleep over this.
I will say, if people do want to see it in practice, if they go to your website and newsletter, but go to your Instagram, you have so much, like years worth of content at this point where people can sort of microdose no new things. I'm going to put these links in the show notes, but I would highly recommend that people go and they check that out because it really does make it seem so doable and so doable for whatever life you are living. And I love that you are not about that shame and blame lifestyle. If people buy something that is new that really brings them joy, you're not like shame on you and wagging your finger. You've really created a challenge and a movement that is so inclusive for everybody on the sort of shopping, buying things spectrum. So now that we've done that, I would love to ask you 3 questions. First question is, the word positivity means something different to everybody. So when you think of positivity, what does it mean to you?
My partner said something to me that he had heard someone else say, because sometimes I can get very analytical and focus on what's not working and then get really in a space of that. And when things were pretty rough at one point, he had said, along with a lot of other compassionate and empathetic things that were helpful, he said something like, hunt the good. In these times, you really have to hunt the good. And so for me, I feel like with positivity, it's almost inextricably linked with gratitude, maybe more emphasis on the gratitude. It's like a muscle. I have to sometimes, if I get in my feels or whatever, I need to hunt the good and be grateful for those things. I'm not saying in like a toxic positivity way, but gratitude really helps me to feel more positive just about everything, even if shit frankly sucks. Finding the things that I can be grateful for helps me to feel positive through it, or at least move through those situations.
I love that. Hunt the good. That's a good one. Okay. Next question is, when do you feel the most like yourself?
Oh, golly. Probably when I'm just putzing around my house, talking to myself. But I hope other people talk to themselves. But I feel the most like myself, honestly, when I'm alone and I'm just getting into things. I like that feeling. Because I've gotten to a point where I like my own company quite a bit. I spent a good amount of my 20s and even 30s thinking I needed to have, certain things to be like a fully actualized person. And I just really like my own company. I'm a little hermit sometimes. And so that's where I feel the most like myself.
I love that. I think a lot of people who are listening to that, myself included, will relate to that. Okay, final question, the big one. So, little context. I define fearlessness as not necessarily the absence of fear or feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but fearlessness is when the fear that you have of the situation, the thing, whatever it is less than the faith that you have in yourself. So fearless is when the fear is less than the faith. It's an equation. Given that equation, Ashlee Piper, what makes you feel fearless?
Oh, I think repetition, repeatedly finding myself in those situations or finding myself in situations that are uncomfortable or make me afraid and pulling from that self-reliance that you talk about or that faith. And just the more you kind of face that, I think the more you're like, yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, you do TV. That's probably not something that freaks you out. At least it doesn't seem like that. You're a true communicator and performer. So that's very natural for you. So you probably don't feel like as fearful of those kinds of things, but there are probably other things, of course, that you're afraid of. Yeah, I just think continually challenging yourself with things that you are afraid of and facing, like I'm afraid of heights.
And what did you hike again?
Annapurna Base Camp. And I've done hikes in the Tetons and I did Tour de Mont Blanc last year. Like I am absolutely afraid of heights. I'm also afraid of flying. And so I just continually push myself to gently nudge myself to confront those fears. And the more I do that and I meet the moment with courage or faith in myself, the more that faith in myself continues. And then when I'm faced with an unfamiliar situation, I can say, well, I've done this before and I made it through, or it wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be, or it turned out really freaking great. It's like a muscle. It helps me. But when I start to get too much in a comfort zone and I'm not challenging myself in those ways, I find the fear comes back more strongly for stuff.
This was so great. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my God. My honor, my pleasure. You're just the best.
That was Ashlee Piper, and that was No New Things. If you are interested in learning more about Ashlee, about No New Things, maybe doing your own No New Things challenge, head on over to the show notes where everything that we talked about in this episode is linked. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, this is a one-woman show here. I would be so grateful if you did one or all of a few things. Number one, I would be so grateful, and it'll really help you out, if you subscribe to the WANTcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you follow along and get your podcasts. Also, if you could share it with a friend, maybe a friend that you want to do the No New Things challenge with, and you can get all of the information and prep together, that would be so helpful. Yes, the algorithms will keep algorithming, but there is truly still nothing like getting a recommendation from a friend. And I would be so grateful if you chose to recommend the WANTcast to a friend of yours. And if you want to take it one step further and recommend it to the greater internet community at large, I would be so grateful if you left a review on iTunes telling people why you love the WANTcast and why they should be tuning into these episodes every 2 weeks. That wraps it up for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it just as much as I did. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me and Ashlee today. I know it's valuable, and I am so truly honored and grateful that you choose to spend your time and energy here with us on the WANTcast. As always, move forward fearlessly, spread the good word, and be the you know you're meant to be. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.